It's an absolute beauty from Tristan Borges.
11 goals in the Canadian Premier League in match week 8, and here on the CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen, we are going to talk about almost all of them, I think. I'm Charlie O'Connor-Clarke, that's Mitchell Tierney right over there. It was another, I think we say it's another great weekend every week, but, it was a great weekend for entertaining games, in 4 different cities. Lots of fun yesterday in Valour in Winnipeg. They're obviously first home game of 2024, but the full results from match week 8, Forge FC 3, York United 0, third 9-5 derby win of the year for them. Pacific 1, Cavalry 1, and then on Sunday, Atletico Ottawa 2, Halifax Wanderers 2, followed by Valour FC 2 and Vancouver FC 0. And Mitch, that's actually where we're going to start this week because it's fresh in our memory. We don't want to forget it. That was a lot of fun. Don't look now, but Valour FC, I believe, unbeaten in 3 games. First game back at home first game on the new turf at Princess Auto Stadium, and they christened it well with a win over a second place Vancouver FC team. Mitch, you were on this game for us. What did you like about Valour, and how much better are the vibes there than they were a couple weeks ago?
Well, I didn't like the 2-hour rain delay, which took us deep into Sunday evening. But by the time the game did eventually start, it was, a pretty perfect way to open their home portion of the season for Valour Football Club. I mean, score 2 goals, keep a clean sheet. A star is kind of born in front of the home fans, and Jordan Sweibel, who's a player that they've been missing, kind of that clinical finisher for I guess a couple of years, since certain Moses Dyer, who wasn't there on Sunday because he was suspended for now playing for Vancouver FC. I think just in terms of the results and performance, is exactly what you would have wanted with some home cooking for Valour Football Club.
Some home cooking, yeah. Jordy Swivel really has been kind of that, maybe not somebody we expected to take up this mantle, but he does have a good scoring record back in Australia when he got here, and as you mentioned, has been that effective number 9. Mitch, what has made Valour more effective in these last couple of weeks since losing the first 5 games of the season, then maybe really seeming to turn it around in the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing probably is defensively. I think it was 20 goals that they shipped through the first 6 games in all competition, which never going to win many if you're going to allow that many goals. And the fact that they were able to just limit the mistakes that they've been making. I mean, you go back and look at a lot of those goals, and they are either miscommunications or poor back passes, or like few of them are their players being beaten solidly for goals. There are a lot of things that you would like to cut out, and when you're conceding that many goals, it probably is expected that it's going to be a lot of things you'd like to cut out. But yeah, excellent from them. Tasmo Takutis coming in has made a world of difference, and just having a consistent back 4, which is something we haven't been able to say about Valour Football Club for who knows how long. With all the injuries that they always seem to pick up back there, has been a game changer. And then Jonathan Viscosi, anything that got through, he was there to stop, not only save, but they did actually try to sink him with a couple back passes, I feel like, in this game. And there was one in particular in the first half where they sent it back to him, and he's in a terrible position, and he somehow still picks out Roberto Alarcon. And having a goalkeeper like that who can play with his feet is a game changer at times, and we certainly saw it in this match.
Yeah, absolutely. Viscosi, a very experienced keeper coming back to Winnipeg, and he is rightfully so, I think, in the team of the week this week. Before we move on to Vancouver, let's just get the final word on Valour, because obviously it was good spirits in Winnipeg, and for those that did stick around in the stands, they got quite the show from the home team. So let's go back and hear what their coach Philip DeSantos had to say about a very memorable night at Princess Auto Stadium.
They're all very big in this league. I think that it was special because you spend so much time away from home, and you have a good crowd that weathered a wait and a storm, and the guys in the locker room, and that those levels of anxiety they raise up, and it was just important for us to come home and win the match. Man, it's been a while. It's been a while since we've played at home, and I think it was a perfect night. You look at it, it was almost from a movie scene. Rainy, the lights, the crowd, and man, a lot of good things. Very happy.
Very happy man. Not a particularly different tone than when he's not happy, to be honest, from Phil. He's always quite measured, but definitely understandable. That'd be very happy. But Mitch, not so happy are Vancouver FC, despite still sitting in second place in the Canadian Premier League. What do you think was a problem for them? I know you wrote a bit about how their back line was a little bit leakier than usual. We talked about Valour's being stronger. Was that the main problem for Vancouver?
I think so. I mean, Afshin Ghabi called them home opener gifts that they gave to Valour FC in the match. I think that just a couple of defensive errors that they weren't really used to, and I think we do see a little bit the lack of depth from this Vancouver team, in the sense that and Ghabi spoke about that as well. When you're missing Moses Dyer, when you're missing Rocco Romeo, these are players that at both ends of the pitch are so critical to their success. And we really saw it, I think, especially with the lack of Dyer. I mean, there just maybe wasn't that player to push through and finish off some of the chances, because they did get into pretty solid areas throughout the match. And as we mentioned, Viscosi came up big, but if you wonder if Dyer's on the end of some of those balls, he might just carry it with him into the net and pass Viscosi, as he's done a few times this season. So I think that's really it. Growing pains was another term that was used for a club that is trying to hang near the top of the table. And I think for them, it just has to be better away from home and consistently. And I think defensively is the biggest factor in changing that.
Yeah, Vancouver, undefeated at home, have lost every time they've gone away from home so far this year.
Nope.
Tim
Hortons Field.
They wanted Tim Hortons Field. I am not a great reader, so that was actually the last time they went away from home. So still anyway, recovering, moving swiftly on from this game.
Let's get out.
Let's move on. Let's go to Ottawa, where I think this was certainly the most dramatic, maybe the most entertaining, and definitely the one of the most storylines coming out of it. Halifax 2-0 up in the 75th minute, thanks to Thiago Coimbra, which is the good side of Coimbra's performance, but then the not so good side of his afternoon rears its head up just about not even 10 minutes later, when Coimbra's sent off for a second yellow card. Harsh, definitely. He gets a second yellow for just kind of kicking the ball away for time wasting, and it hurts double because the first yellow card was for taking his shirt off when he scored. So it's I guess what we call a non-contact sending off for Thiago Coimbra, and unfortunate. But after that, Atletico Ottawa channeling their inner 2024 Bayer Leverkusen. They didn't quit. It took them 11 minutes of stoppage time, but at the end, Alberto Zapater with the equalizer in the, I was going to say 90-11th, but it's the 101st.
Some Lord of the Rings speak coming out there.
The 90-11th minute, the 101st minute, Alberto Zapater with his head gets on top of this one, equalizes at TD Place, and Atletico Ottawa make history with a historic goal, because I think it's the latest goal we've ever had in the CPL, at least in regular time, not including an extra time final. But Atletico Ottawa make history with their 8th straight game unbeaten to begin the 2024 season. That is the longest. I know this one. I know this one for sure. I didn't just try to come up with it on the top of my head. This is why you do prep, everybody. The longest unbeaten streak to start a season. That's better than Cavalry's 7-win streak. Well, it's a longer unbeaten streak than Cavalry's 7 wins to start 2019. I don't know if it's technically better. And I believe it was Forge last year that went 7 unbeaten to start the year. But Atletico Ottawa now with 8 and sit pretty comfortably at the top of the standings on 18 points above Vancouver with 13. Mitch, what can we even say about this game? We'll start with Ottawa before we have to get to being, living with Halifax's disappointment again. We'll get to that after. But Ottawa, they are down 2-0 late in the game. They dig deep. They find a way. What did you like about that kind of approach and mentality?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with the good news. I mean, what could have been a really significant moment for Halifax this season ends up being a massive moment for Atletico Ottawa, because we've seen how these midweek Canadian Championship games, particularly from the team that has to travel, really affects them in the following match. I mean, Ottawa took advantage of Forge the week before with a 3-0 victory, with them coming off what happened against CF Montreal. So to have the disappointment that they had in the Canadian Championship and then turn around and be able to come from behind, keep that unbeaten streak going, and keep up their positive momentum within the league, which is a very, very important thing when it comes to what their ultimate goal is, which is picking up a CPL Shield here. I think that this is one of those results that if they're able to go out and do that, you can point back to and say this was really a massive point one in terms of keeping that going. I mean, obviously, I think the one thing you could say about Ottawa is they probably would have preferred to have this result midweek, coming back from 2 to tie 2-2, because then they'd be in a Canadian Championship semifinal right now. But to be able to do that in the aftermath is a significant statement about where this team is mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that a lot of it is to do with all of the kind of experience and the winning mentality that they've brought into that locker room. I know that some of the players have spoken about that recently. Having somebody like Alberto Zapater since midway through last season, he's been a big part of that. Even Ollie Bassett has been there the whole way, but he remembers what it was like when Ottawa were really good 2 years ago. And he kind of was able to see all of the things that weren't there last year when they missed the playoffs. So again, a lot to like about Ottawa. And they suffered in the first kind of half, maybe first hour of this game. Amir Didic injured, so Tier Walker comes in at the back. That's a big miss for Ottawa. Not to say that Tier Walker can't do the job, but he's not Amir Didic, who is one of the best defenders in this league. But impressive to see that mentality and to see them not roll over and quit, because when you're in first place, you've had an incredible start to the season. You're going to be in first place no matter how that game ends. Like, it is, they go down 2-0 that late in the game. It wouldn't have been the most surprising thing in the world to see them say, or to see them kind of just see it out and be like, all right, we'll get the next one, because it's not the end of the world to lose a game like that, but to fight back, to see that opportunity when they go up to, when Halifax go down to 10 men, to claw back, I think is very impressive. And to wrap us up on Atletico Ottawa here, though, let's go and hear what Carlos Gonzalez had to say about another well-won point from his side.
Well, we knew that these situations that happened today could happen, because at the end of the day, we come from a long week, we come from a long month. Also today was a very warm weather, so nothing was very for our side. And we knew that this could happen, that the football could lack in certain moments on the team. But I take the last 30 minutes of the game that the team did. There are moments in the season, there are moments in games that the football, the tactics are not the most important thing. It's more about the attitude, part, the intangible things, the spirit, the commitment, the pride that you play. And I think that we were brilliant on that. It was spectacular. These points are points that at the end of the season we will remember. And that's what I grabbed from the game.
Points that at the end of the season they will remember. A point that still isn't not valuable to Halifax. They're second of the year and they had their first lead in this game, but Mitch, it has to be another gutting feeling for this team to be so close to getting over that hump, to getting that first win, and to have it ripped away like that's got to be pretty crushing, right?
Absolutely, because on that very same day, we see what getting a result, and obviously it happened against them, can do for a club's belief in Valour, who now have 3 straight results. So the fact that they just keep getting so close and aren't able to see it over the finish line. I mean, they take a lead in this match. That's a positive. They have that lead for 90 101 minutes, which I guess is obviously a positive, because that's something that's been a concern for them throughout this season.
Yeah.
And this was their best performance, no question about it. This was the best we've seen them. They looked a lot like Halifax last year, especially to do that away from home, which has been, for a long time, a bit of an issue for this club. But at the end of the day, a single point, they're 5 points in last place, which, so they're going to be last next week as well. They might be last the following week, depending upon if Valour can, even pick up, 1 point in the next 2 games. That's not a good spot to be at all for this club right now. And, it really, with 2 straight at home coming up, the time has to be now for them to start turning this into 3. It can't just be about moral victories or best performance of the season. It has to be first win of the season in these next 2 games. That's where we're at.
I mean, I think they've probably been in that mode for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah,
to be honest.
absolutely.
But I mean, the thing is, you'll look back like 2-3 months from now. We can look back at the schedule and their run of results and see that they drew 2-2 at Atletico Ottawa, who were in first place at the time, and in a vacuum, that's a very good result, right? But when you look at the context and the circumstances of being up 2-0 with 15 minutes to play, well, it ended up being 25 minutes, but still. But without much time to play late in the game, you're up 2-0. You have to see that one out, and I think that'll make it arguably hurt more than if it had been, if they'd drawn 0-0 in Ottawa or something like that. But again, they have no choice but to soldier on. They host Pacific, I believe, next Saturday at home. Again, I don't know how close we are to saying they're must wins, but it feels like you really, really, really need a result, and you need to get on that horse to kind of avoid continuing to spiral, because you mentioned they're 5 points behind Valour now, when they were ahead of them 2 weeks ago with their 1 point, while Valour had 0, but Valour suddenly picked up 7 in 3 weeks. So anyway, that's enough of this negativity and sadness. I'm sorry to Halifax, and I still believe that they will be turning it around at some point, but to what extent, we will have to see. Moving on to the Saturday games, though, Pacific and Cavalry, 2 teams that know each other very, very well. Pacific take the lead very early in this game, thanks to a hell of a header from Stefan Yates, to get that low and direct it into the goal from there. And it looked like all was going well for Pacific, especially after the aforementioned Canadian Championship win midweek. But second half, Cavalry, they might be the best team in the league at getting contributions off the bench this year. Toby Warshevsky comes into the game. He scores pretty quickly after he comes off the bench, and it is 1-1. Mitchell, what did you notice about this game? And let's start with Pacific. What did you like about the way that they played and took the lead, and maybe why couldn't they quite see it out?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that without Cedric Toussaint, Adonijah Reed, and obviously Ali Ndom for the season, they're still picking up points. That's, and again, we talked about what the Canadian Championship kind of hangover can do for a club. Obviously, they won and they were at home, so it's not the same significant factor that it was for Atletico Ottawa. But look, this is a side that if they keep playing like this, they're just going to be so difficult to beat. They're so committed to this defensive system, and yet they can really still find ways to score. With Ayman Salouf coming back, Josh Hurd starting to pick up some momentum, and for the second time against Cavalry, they really should have nicked it at the end. They had great opportunities towards the very end of the game, two that really probably on another day they should have scored. And yeah, I think Juan Quintana's come in and been excellent in replacement for Ali and Dom. So this team's maybe deeper than we thought they would be to start the season. Stefan Yates, as we mentioned, has been great. He's just got his first Trinidad and Tobago call up, along with the rest of the Canadian Premier League have been called up as well to that.
The entire CPL is playing for Trinidad this week.
So yeah, credit to him. I think he's added a different element to that Pacific attack in terms of creating, and he obviously scores in this game as well. So I do think there's some things to like for Pacific, but we're about to find out so much about them. They go on the road for 3 straight games. They've been at home all season, and that's the big factor, I think.
Yes, we have been seeing a lot of them at Starlight Stadium. They it's still tough for me to get a read on Pacific. They play so well against Ottawa midweek, win that game. You look at their league form, that's 4 without a win after they won 3 out of 4 to start the season and went unbeaten. Again, I think we are starting to figure out that this is a strong defensive team, a team that can be very difficult to beat. Yeah, a team that can be difficult to beat, but we do need to see more of the goal scoring. I know that James Merriman spoke a bit after the game about using Ayman Salouf in some new ways, trying to find him more of the ball, because he has obviously had quite a quiet start to the season. I think he has 3 goals in all competitions, but they've all come from the penalty spot, and he spent some time out of the lineup. He's been maybe not quite the explosive version of himself we saw last year, but anyway, Pacific in that kind of still not quite clear on what they are as a team at the moment. I think looking for somebody to take reins in the attack. Obviously, Rion Moore been suspended for the last 3 CPL games, so that doesn't help. So when he's back, maybe he's that guy. Anyway, let's talk about Cavalry though, because they also are frustrated at the moment, are they not? This is a team that has one, I believe, win in CPL play. That was over Vancouver. They've drawn now 4 games in a row. They've drawn 6 games in total to start this season. It is feeling a little bit like the start of last year, but I think they're frustrated, right, Mitchell? Is that kind of the sense that you're getting from them?
Yeah, I think this is a very frustrating result for them. Again, you had all week to prepare for this team. You can give them maybe a pass last week again with just how tired they were coming back from BC Place, but this week you have an entire weekend to come out and allow a goal that early, and then to only be able to come back and get one yourself and maybe not create as much as you would have liked. I think Tommy Wheeldon Jr. kind of put it really eloquently after the game when he said they're getting into all the right positions, but they're missing that moment of magic, like the decisive moment that comes from a player to score a goal. They have 208 touches in the opposition box this season, which is well more than any other team in the Canadian Premier League. They're getting great chances from wide areas. Fraser Aird, another, I think 11 crosses this game. He's running away with that category. And with his deliveries, you're not going to tell him to stop. They're clearly going to create opportunities that way, but you'd like to see a little bit more from maybe other areas. And again, once the ball gets into those central spots, which guys are going to be the ones to do a little bit and put the ball in the back of the net. Again, looking ahead at their schedule, they've got really interesting fixtures coming up. They've got Forge at home, they're traveling to Vancouver, and then they play Atletico Ottawa, who are not only top of the table, but are also their bogey team. I think most clubs, you'd kind of be a little concerned. I think for Cavalry, this is perfect for them. This comes at a time where maybe they haven't reached their heights, and it's a 3 straight games where they have an opportunity here to show we are still the Cavalry from last season. We are the club that so many expected us to be this year, but they have to do it.
Absolutely. They do have to do it. How many touches in the box did you say they've had?
208.
Good Lord. They've scored 10 goals.
Yeah.
That's definitely a conversion rate that they will want to improve. But let's not ask each other whether Cavalry is frustrated. Let's ask them themselves, because we did hear from Dan Klomp after the game. So let's go back to Starlight Stadium and get his thoughts on this run of draws for Cavalry FC.
Yeah, it's getting really frustrating now. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like we have a chance every game. I feel like we have the better chances every game. Now we like the last 10 minutes we throw everything forward because I think everybody is a bit sick of drawing the game. So everybody is trying to get that second goal. But again, on this one, I think we give the first one up a bit easy, and I stick my hand up for that one. Just have to clear the ball there, but. Yeah, all in all, I think the effort was not the problem today. Finishing the chances again was the problem, and I feel like first half we didn't really get to play our own game.
Didn't really get to play our own game. Anyway, moving on to the first game of the weekend. That was at Tim Hortons Field. I was there. Forge FC 3, York United 0. And Mitch, I think that we were joking before the show that we could honestly just kind of hit play on like a recording of the last time we talked about this fixture, because these two teams have met 3 times now this year, once in the Canadian Championship, twice in the league, and it's been pretty much the same every time. Forge have scored 3 goals in each of those games. York scored once in the Canadian Championship, but it didn't really make a difference. It was a late one when they were already pretty much out of it. This is Forge kind of getting back on the horse. They were beaten pretty soundly in Ottawa last week. They were frustrated by it, but maybe a little bit tired from that 5-hour marathon they played in Montreal. But they had been 3 games in the league without a win. They scored 1 goal in their last 3 CPL games. So instead, they scored 3 goals in their last 1 CPL game. Now,
math, unreal.
That is math. Mitch, this is more like the Forge that began the season and the team that beat York 3-0 at York Line Stadium as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, to end their winless streak by any rate was important. To end it this emphatically is what Forge does, really, and a real statement to the fact that they are still wanting to be competitive within the regular season title. And I think the difference in maybe the past matches to this one, and something you wrote very well about, is Kwesi Poku, a player. Am I stealing your point there?
No, I'm just wondering how much how much physical pain it caused you to give me that compliment.
Yeah. Oh, so much. Yeah. Thankfully, I saw my wife just coming with cupcakes, so I have that to wait for after the show, which I'm very excited
He's
about.
In a good mood. He's in a generous mood now. Kind of.
Exactly.
Kwesi Poku.
Kwesi
What
Poku.
was I right about?
You're I mean, he's been excellent at the number 9 position. But one thing, I'll give more compliments out here. David Edgar, Christian Jack on match night on OneSoccer spoke about really well, is the fact that they want more depth of runs this season.
Mm-hmm.
Kwesi Poku, a player who can really do that. And Forge also all about attacking patterns. In the 9th minute, the exact same sequence where they score their second goal. Poku gets in behind, 2 defenders track him. He cuts it back to Borges. That time, Borges crosses it into Badibanga, and it doesn't turn out in a goal. This time, Borges decides to take it for himself. And usually when he does that, good things happen this season in the Canadian Premier League. So I think they'll be really happy with how Kwesi Poku is adapting to that position. And another kind of exciting thing for Forge is, we think at some point in theory, the visa will get approved for Nana Opoku, who's a player who has a very similar profile to Kwesi Poku. So to be able to be comfortable and kind of get that in their system of having a striker who can get in behind like that and create chances through runs, it is exciting for this club, and in the long-term process, I think will be another element to this already, lethal Forge offense.
Yeah. I mean, just quickly, Bobby Smirniotis was asked about the status of Nana Opoku-Ampoma, and he said he could write a book on the status, but it sounds like the player has been has had his passport sent back to him in Ghana, so he is expected to be getting on a plane in the next few days. It sounds like Eliman Cisse might be a little bit longer, unfortunately. I know that's very frustrating for Forge. But Kwesi Poku, that's what we're talking about here. He's been played in that number 9 the last 3 games. since Taron Campbell and Jordan Hamilton have been dealing with that injury, it was kind of a necessity for Forge to try him there, but it worked out immediately in Montreal, and it worked very, very well here against York. He obviously makes that run, as you mentioned, to create the second goal, bringing that ball down, and then just standing, maybe not the greatest marking on the third goal with how much space he has between the two center backs just standing there, but he's very good on the turn to hold up the ball and find Daniel Parra in the box for that finish. And I asked Bobby about Kwesi's performances after this game. So here's what Bobby had to say about just how long he's been kind of thinking about using him in that way.
Yeah, to be honest, it's something I talked a lot about with staff from last year, just in the different situations or different places he can play on the pitch. He's a young guy. He's got a lot of ability. And sometimes you got to look beyond what you see. He's a player. If you look at him in all of our small-sided games, he's finishing in and around the goal. He's excellent. He's good on the turn. He holds the ball up. On the flip side, he's got all the tools to be a top left back or wing back and so on. So it's something we've been talking about. We've been discussing as a staff, and sometime when there's a need, you fill that need with someone. And with our two strikers out at the moment, it was an opportunity to test this out. And so far, I think it's been going very well.
I would say so as well. Let's wrap up with York United here. Their second game with Mauro Eustachio in charge as interim head coach. We believe his last in charge of this team. It looks like there may be a coaching announcement imminent at York United. But Mitch didn't go quite as well as the week before against Halifax for York and for Eustachio. But what do you make of kind of where this club is at the moment? Because they're still pretty afloat in the middle of the table. Certainly not at their best in this game. Made a few individual errors and maybe made things a little bit too easy at times for Forge with the marking and the defending. But a team that when it's on is very good, and maybe when it isn't can be exposed quite badly.
Yeah, I think that's basically what it comes down to, and it's dependent on opponent as well. Obviously, there are some teams that maybe wouldn't have made them pay in the way Forge does, but we've seen over 3 matches against Forge, any individual error you're going to make like that. Like if you hand Kyle Becker the ball in the box with an open net, he's going to score. So I think that's the main thing. Just really inconsistent, especially defensively. I mean, only Valour have allowed more goals this season now. And again, Valour's been away from home for most of the season. So that's where I think you start to get really concerned with this York side. It's another one where maybe the back line hasn't been that consistent in terms of personnel and players coming in and out. So I think that's obviously something that they're going to want to control over the second half of the season. But yeah, I think they have to get more consistent, or they're going to start dropping while other teams kind of go on runs here. Because again, we talked about kind of maybe the theme of this week is momentum, and York just don't really have any right now.
No, it's been very, very difficult for them to build any. They're at home next Sunday against Vancouver. That'll be a big game between two teams really, really looking for a response, I think. So that is one to tune in for. And again, possibly the first game under a new manager for York. We will see. We shall see on what the situation unfolds there. But anyway, that is the 4 games in the CPL this weekend. Let's look very quickly at the standings and how we are at the moment. Atletico Ottawa, as we mentioned, way out in front, followed by Vancouver and Forge tied on 13 points. Pacific just behind on 12, York on 10, Cavalry just knocking on their door at 9 points just outside the playoffs, followed by a resurgent Valour team, which suddenly is only 3 points out of a playoff spot. Who would have thought it a few weeks ago? And then at the bottom, Halifax Wanderers, 2 points, but still not out of reach if they're able to go on a run, which they could begin next weekend if we look at the schedule and what we've got coming up this week. No midweek games, no Canadian Championship, just pure CPL action next Saturday and Sunday, starting with Halifax hosting Pacific, 3 o'clock Atlantic, 11 a.m. Pacific if you're out on the West Coast, followed that afternoon by Cavalry hosting Forge in another big one. That's always a great fixture, 3 o'clock local time. That's 5 Eastern if you're in Hamilton. Sunday, we've got Valour at home again, seeing if they can repeat that magic at Princess Auto Stadium. 12:30 local kickoff, 1:30 Eastern against Atletico Ottawa. And then finally, the Tony Bet match of the week, as we just mentioned, York hosting Vancouver FC at 6 o'clock Eastern at York Lions Stadium between two sides. Very, very, very eager for a result. And to wrap up our show this week, as always, producer Benedict Rhodes, I think, has gone to his arsenal of various torture devices to grill us in some horrible and inhumane way, and I will just give him the floor to do so.
Yeah, we'll start with something nice, though. We'll start with a nice comment we got on YouTube from IC Monkeys, who said,
Nice comment.
Great recap of this week's games. As someone who loves the CPL and in-depth analysis, this is essential. Keep up the fantastic work and go Ottawa. So, very nice comment.
I like most of that, yeah. That's good. That's good. That's not a question. I don't. Thank you.
No. First question, though, is the Canadian men's national team plays against the Netherlands and France this week. What are your hopes and expectations for these two matches, which are the first two under new head coach Jesse Marsh?
Don't get embarrassed, I think is the best. I mean, these are two very, very good teams. There's no reason to expect a result, I think, but they're very good preparation, having to play Argentina in the Copa. So, yeah, I think, Mitchell, I think it's just show that you can maybe go head to head against these teams a little bit. You're probably not going to win these games, but I think you just want to be competitive.
Yeah, a goal or two would be nice. I think if you can find the back of the net, but yeah, I don't think anyone at this point should be expecting, any sort of tremendous, incredible results from this team. Just where they are in terms of early under a head coach, where they are in the international rankings. On an individual standpoint, I think there's a lot of players who I am very excited to see how they perform. So, a couple of standout individual performances from, say, an Ishmael Kone or, even Jonathan David or some of these players who we expect to potentially move this summer. This is a fantastic platform for them to show that they are at the next level. I mean, Jonathan David's been doing that for how many seasons now, but a Kone or a bunch of those other younger players. So maybe a couple solid individual performances, a goal or two, and like Charlie said, just don't get embarrassed. And I think we are all very happy.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, I guess, how. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for Jesse Marsh to actually kind of instill some kind of tactical blueprint or identity. Obviously, it's very hard to do that quickly, and it's also very hard to do in games against teams as good as the Netherlands and France.
You don't touch the ball.
You're not going to have the ball very much, so you can't really establish your possession shapes and your structures. So I am interested to see kind of how they set up, what kind of plan they have in place, but also being quite aware that it's not necessarily the same kind of plan that they're likely to have 6 months from now or a year from now when they're playing games against other kinds of competition. But anyway, very exciting anyway. It'd be fun watching, I don't know, Alistair Johnston trying to slide through Kylian Mbappe. That'd be good. Looking forward to it. All right, Benny, what else do we have?
Next one. So you could take a player from any CPL team and put them on another team. Who do you think would be a good fit for both parties?
So I have one that may get me run out of multiple Canadian Premier League markets. It may turn me into a hated figure, but I genuinely think that now, obviously, this isn't going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying that I want it to happen. I'm not saying any of that. Purely from a fit perspective, would Sergio Camargo not solve a lot of Pacific's problems? He's a creative player. They've been lacking that kind of final third touch, getting into those right areas, and he can score as well from the box with those one-touch finishes. I think that Camargo is one of the most talented creative players in the CPL, and that is kind of where Pacific have struggled at times, especially early this season. So you know what? I don't think anybody's going to like it. I don't think that'll make anybody happy, but that is the first thing that came to my mind. Mitchell, do you have one?
Maybe I'll go for a player who, has been bagging goals this season, and just a Jordy Sweibel on Halifax Wanderers, like just a player to get on the end of all the things they're creating right now. We've seen what a difference that has been for Valour over the past few weeks. Halifax just really need someone to play as their number 9, keep their shirt on maybe, and just finish a few chances here. So I think that'd be a nice fit.
Yeah. Ben, did you have one?
Yeah, I was going to say Tobias Barshevsky to Halifax for all the same reasons Mitch just said.
Yeah,
that's a good one too.
Yeah, that is a good one too. Similar fit. All right. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, last one. We heard from Dan Klomp earlier. This weekend, he became the latest CPL Centurion, to reach 100 appearances for a CPL team in all competitions. Where do you rank him among the best players in CPL history?
Oh, one day we could do a whole show about this, just ranking like our top 50 players in CPL. I would love to do that. I think he's probably top 10. I think anybody who's won a Player of the Year award is top 10. I don't know. It's tough to compare attacking players to midfielders to defenders, and then where do you put goalkeepers in there at all?
You don't.
I think maybe they don't count. Maybe they're just their own thing. I don't know. Yeah, I think top 10. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. Again, for a player who won Player of the Year, basically swept the awards last year. I think we saw what he could do against the Vancouver Whitecaps as well in terms of playing at a MLS level. This is definitely one of the best players to play in the Canadian Premier League.
Yeah, I don't think I'd had him. I think to be in my top 3 to 5, you have to have been around since the start. I think the top.
They're
of my
all
list
Forge players.
No, well, the top of my list is probably the guys like the Kyle Becker and the Manny Aparicio and those sorts of players. But I think Dan Klomp has definitely established himself pretty much in and around that class of top 10. Yeah. All right. Benedict, is that all we've got?
That is. Make sure you send in your questions for next week, and I'll try to get some next week on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a nice speedy run of stoppage time. Thank you very much to everybody who sent in questions and comments. Thank you very much to Benedict for curating those and producing this podcast. And thank you very much, Mitchell, for, again, putting up with me for a full 42 minutes right now. So, again, we will see you all next week after next week's slate of games. And thank you very, very much for watching or listening. And thanks, as always, to Volkswagen for sponsoring the podcast. We will see you all next time.
It's an absolute beauty from Tristan Borges. Into the box, it's headed out and it's in! Athletic